I've come to the realization that women will seek external validation in order to believe that they're beautiful, irrespective of the numerous assurances they get from their spouse. The emotion I felt most of all was sadness. Sadness that it had come to this. I had done all I could, and this was how it got repaid. My name is Robert, and I first met Amanda at Emory University in Atlanta about 15 years ago. I was the only child of a couple of pecan farmers down in southern Georgia, and their goal in life was to make sure their only child went to college, come hell or high water, as my daddy used to say. Well, I went, I did good, and it all went well. I had ended up in the hospital due to a couple of badly broken legs as a result of falling on the icy steps in January. It didn't get frosty very often, and I wasn't used to it. Falling down was my own fault. I spent a month in the hospital, and it was the worst month of my life. As the bones itched and I gobbled up rose hips, I sobbed into my pillow at night and put on a game face during the day. When they finally let me out, I had no financial aid and no prospects. And of course, I had a giant pile of hospital bills I hadn't a hope of paying. My parents, as I said, were a couple of pecan farmers, and they sure as hell didn't have any savings. We lived paycheck to paycheck, and every spare dollar went into my college fund. That fund quickly disappeared though, and I had to get a job on my newly healed legs. I ended up qualifying for work study and went to work in the campus bookstore, which is where I met Amanda and where the rest of my life began. She came strolling into the bookstore one gorgeous September day and took my heart away. I introduced myself to her, and from then, we became friends and later started dating. We did everything together, we had a million things to talk about, and we were rarely seen out of one another's sight. We did have a few issues where she told me I was controlling and not allowing her to have a life of her own, and I said I'd try to do better, and I promised to do my best to control my possessive nature. Eventually, I did loosen up, and by the time I graduated with my computer science degree, and she graduated with her degree in human resources, we were engaged to be married, and she was all smiles. When we got married, it was every bit as magical as we thought it would be. We got jobs in our fields, me at a medium-sized aid services company, and she as a bank managing personnel. We got a house in the suburbs and were living the American dream. I kept doing my best to prove how much I loved her, cheered with her for her career triumphs, and commiserated with her over her downsides. We cried together when I found out I would be unable to father children because of an extremely low sperm count. Everything coasted along for 15 years until that overheard phone conversation. It was the cliche of all cliches. I had forgotten some of my work-related manuals, and so I sent an email to my boss, letting him know I had to run home and grab them. It was about 11:15 on a Tuesday, and I hurried down to my car. Amanda had told me she wasn't feeling well, so I gave her a mug of tea and a kiss on the forehead and a promise to try and get home early to take care of her. I hurried into my Jeep and drove through the quiet streets to my house. All was as I had left it. I had a small office off the garage with a phone extension, and I hurried in there, hunting through my shelf of manuals for the right one. I picked up the phone to call the other person on my team to verify which manual it was I needed, but before I could dial, I heard a voice on the phone. "I'm looking forward to spending a nice time with you," said a man's voice. Amanda giggled, sounding not at all ill, and responded with, "I'm looking forward to it myself." What followed were the arrangements for setting up a hotel rendezvous. From the sounds of it, Amanda and this unknown man were extremely familiar with each other, trading endearments and sexual innuendos like candy. This suggested to me that this affair, or whatever the hell it was, had been going on a long time, and was not a one-time thing. I was raging up inside me, and I wanted nothing more than to storm in there and shake the hell out of her. But that quickly passed, and my analytical programmer's mind kicked in, collating a number of facts and drawing conclusions. Remember how I said no woman believes her man when he says he thinks she's beautiful? I began to draw this conclusion after 15 years of marriage with Amanda. The first few years, things were great in the sex department. She never turned me down, she would even initiate it. She knew I liked her big butt and boobs and would take any opportunity to rub them on me, purring in my ear in that way a woman does. When you're really in love and a woman purrs in your ear like that, it makes you feel like you could just climb to the top of the highest mountain and scream with joy that this lovely creature is yours, all yours. That all began to taper off gradually, though. When I told her how beautiful she was, she'd only smile half-heartedly at me and give me a perfunctory thanks. Sex dropped off to a few times a week, then maybe 3 to 4 times a month, and finally maybe about twice every month, but only if I pressed hard for it. And she would always sigh, in that way only a woman can do, like she's doing you a big favor by even consenting to be in your presence. I'm sure all you guys know the sigh I'm talking about. Now, as I stood there in my little office, I tried to remember the last time I had been allowed to have sex with my wife, and I thought it was back in October. It was now November. She had lain there, not responding to my caresses and nibbles until I decided to just get it over with. That had really hurt. Now I find out the reason I had been cut off was because she was getting it somewhere else. That really pissed me off. She cut me, her husband, off so that she could go duck some stranger. What the heck? Standing in my office, fresh from hearing that phone call with a more mature view on things, I wondered if I married her because she was the first girl to ever really give me full attention. Thinking on it for a moment, I decided it didn't matter. I still loved her with all my heart, and what she had done had torn it right out. Right then, I decided to find out everything I could about her affair or affairs, and then I'd confront her. Then I divorced her cheating ass. She obviously didn't want me anymore and was just using me for a meal ticket, or some damn thing. I was only the man who tried to prove he loved her, and kept trying for 15 years. Who the heck was this dude come lately? Now, I gotta be honest here. I know that most men really aren't attracted to fat girls, and my wife was definitely fat, at 5'2" and about 210 pounds despite going on numerous diets over the years. So what the hell did this guy see in her? I know that's not a charitable thing to think about your wife, but I had to be realistic. But I decided it really didn't matter. She was cheating on me, lying to me, crapping all over our marriage. While I was thinking about this, I used my phone to call my colleague and verify the manual I needed and got the hell out of there without letting Amanda know I was there. I had some digging to do, and I didn't want to give the game away. She knew me pretty well and might figure something was up by my facial expression. I went back to work and did my job, keeping the plots and plans tucked away in the back of my mind. I would reveal my hand when the time was right. 3 weeks later, I had a wealth of information. I was the one who took care of the computers around our house, and I had keyloggers installed on all our machines. Amanda had either forgotten that, or she didn't give much of a damn if I found out what she was up to. She had changed the passwords on her email accounts and browser, but because of the keyloggers, I was able to get that information pretty easily. Seems my loving wife had been conducting affairs on a website geared for getting laid and had met a number of men from there over the past year. Through the saved emails, I pieced together what was happening. She listened to the men flatter her, tell her how hot and sexy she was with her huge boobs and butt, blah blah blah. Eventually, after some time, she met with them at motels and got well ducked. No wonder I wasn't getting any. I was only her husband after all. I decided to take a poker approach. I wouldn't show my entire hand. I would only come at her with Tony, her latest assignation, and find out how truthful she would be. I printed out emails and got hotel receipts, and I even got pictures from a PI friend whom I had done computer repairs. I got a discount from him because I had managed to save his entire client list and all his data. I sat in the darkened living room and waited for Amanda to get home. She was at the hotel with Tony, definitely getting ducked, according to the PI. I sat, I drank, and I waited. 2 hours later at 9 p.m., she came in, looking happy and humming a bit. She was startled a little when she saw me sitting in the dark living room, idly rocking and cradling an empty bottle. "Rob, you scared me. What are you doing here? How long have you been ducking him?" I asked gently. She gasped and responded, "I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Stop this at once." The tone was trying very hard for anger and incredulity, but sounded more worried than anything. I said in a calm and friendly tone, "Come over here and sit down, my dear wife, and do it right now." She came over and sank into the couch across from me. I asked again, "Now, how long have you been ducking Tony?" She was trying again for indignation, but sounding only weak. I didn't answer, just continued to stare at her. She couldn't meet my gaze and looked away at the wall behind me. Finally, she said 4 weeks. I said, "Thanks for being honest for once. Is he the only one?" She swore he was, but she still didn't meet my eyes. I nodded gently and smiled. I started calling out the names on my list just to let her know I knew what was going on. She tried to interrupt, but I said, "Never mind. I want to know why, Amanda. Why did you do this to us?" She put her face in her hands and cried. I wasn't moved at all by her tears. They meant nothing, only that she was caught. Her betrayal had turned my heart into ice. Finally, she got a grip on herself and looked back up at me and said, "Rob, I love you. I do, really. With those other guys, it was just sex." I said, "Really? The sex you weren't giving me." She said, "Well, they made me feel beautiful. I know I'm fat, but they made me feel desirable." And what did I do? Make you feel hideous. I was starting to get mad now, but I ruthlessly suppressed it. "You're my husband. You're supposed to say those things. I know you were just telling me that because you had to." I then asked, "So what? You thought you would go out and find other guys to tell you that you were beautiful? Never minding our wedding vows, never minding what it would do to me? Is that about the size of it, Amanda? Please, Rob, it's not like that. I found this whole trove of sites online about men who like big girls. It was like a whole new world for me. I know you said you like me, but you're my husband. You're supposed to say that. So when I put up the profile and got all these responses, it was like a big rush for me. I don't know how to explain it." The funny thing was, I sort of understood what she was saying. Feeling sexy and desirable. Feeling like somebody wanted you. I know that feeling. I thought I had it with my wife. Guess I was wrong. I said, "Well, my lawyer will be in touch with you to work out all the details." I rose from my recliner and was headed for the bedroom to grab my suitcase, which was already packed, when she started screaming, "Rob." "What lawyer? You're not divorcing me, are you?" I said, "You cheated on me, Amanda. The first time you hit the submit button on your first profile, the first time you sent sexy pictures to whoever your first duck buddy was, the first time you shut the first motel door on me, you cheated. And I refuse to live with a cheating wife." She started to cry in earnest, but I was unmoved and went to get my suitcase. I gave her everything I had, and she took it and threw it back in my face. I left the house, suitcase in hand, and slammed the door on her wails. I still loved her, but I wasn't going to comfort her, not after all I'd done, and after all she'd done. I gave her half my adult life, and she tossed it away for some cheap thrills. I got in my car and headed for a cheap apartment I had found near work. I'd give my lawyer the papers the following day. I just wanted the marriage over with. I didn't want to inflict any damage on her. She ripped all the fight out of me. For a while, however, I was tempted to just let her do her thing. At least I wouldn't be alone. But then I realized I already was. She'd given herself to others, and the only thing with me was her body. Her mind was elsewhere. The divorce went through without much of a fuss. Amanda tried to talk with me, but I didn't want to listen. She had nothing to say that I wanted to hear. Even though I knew intellectually that no woman ever really believes her man when he says she is beautiful, I thought Amanda would believe me enough to not try to seek validation outside the marriage. 6 months after that confrontation in the living room, the divorce was final. Although it did get a bit rough at the start, but it later went well. I later heard she moved up to Tennessee to be with Tony, and he had gotten her to join in with the swingers community out there. I hope she got a lot of affirmation of her desirability from them. Meanwhile, I continued to work for my IT company and live in my little apartment. I stayed single for a while and started dating, but refused anything serious. It was high school and college all over again. I don't plan to get married anytime soon. I figured I was pretty much going to be single for a while, and I was resigned to it. The 15-year interlude that I called a marriage did nothing to change anything. It was all an illusion. I guess there are really no such things as happy endings in real life, only bad and worse outcomes. Nobody wins in a cheating scenario. There are only losers. Thanks for listening. Share, like, and subscribe to listen to more stories like this. Take care.